If you have ADHD or you think you've got ADHD and you run a business, then this video is just for you. If you don't know me, my name's Jeremy Jacobs. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been doing it for 18 years and I also have ADHD. I was diagnosed in my early 40s about 5 years ago, and I ran my business for 13 years with undiagnosed ADHD. I'm also a coach and mentor, and I do specialise in working with ADHD clients. And so I do have a background and an understanding of firsthand what it's like to have ADHD and run a business, but also have a unique insight into other business owners who have ADHD and what it takes for them to run a business. And I just wanted to talk through some of the things that I've learned on my journey, share a bit of my story, but also share what I've learned in how to run a business with ADHD, to manage all of the crap that comes with that, and hopefully inspire you and give you something to take away, to put into your business, to learn, to grow, if that's what you're up to. So I was diagnosed about 5 years ago, and when I first found out about ADHD, I'd heard about it before growing up. It wasn't really as well talked about as it is today, and I was struggling, and a friend of mine said to me, maybe you've got ADHD. She had recently been diagnosed herself, so I did a ton of research on the internet. There was far less content out there than there is today, and I read up about it, and I thought, maybe I do have ADHD. So I was one of the lucky people that managed to get a diagnosis quite early on. If you're based in the UK, then you'll know that the waiting list for ADHD diagnosis is about 3 years maybe. And a lot of people can't afford to go privately to get a diagnosis. It's very, very expensive. And so when I found out that I had ADHD, it came as no surprise. And I think pretty much every single person that I've spoken to who has been diagnosed with ADHD said exactly the same. It came as no surprise. Interestingly, a lot of people in my life were like, oh yeah, we thought you had ADHD for a long time. No one had the courage to say anything to me. And if you are someone who has been diagnosed or you're looking at getting a diagnosis in your later life, what I've realized is that there is a lot of potential trauma, sadness, frustration, anger, all of those kind of emotions around it. Because I don't know about you, but for me, when I grew up as a kid, I was called hyperactive, disruptive, not so much lazy because I was pretty hyperactive, annoying, loud, often told by parents and loved ones, friends and family, in a very loving way, thankfully, to go away and leave them alone. And I know for myself, but I also know from a lot of people that I've spoken to that have had a diagnosis in maybe their mid to late 30s, 40s plus, is that we grow up with this message that there's something wrong with us because we're different. And back then in the 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s, no one had this understanding that we have this understanding now of ADHD. And so you get this message constantly that there's something wrong with you. You might be called lazy, distant, hyperactive, loud, annoying, whatever version of that not very nice comment or way of speaking about people you experienced. But, that in itself, to grow up with that message all of your life, and as kids and young adults and not having the tools and the language and the support to deal with it, it does have an impact on us as adults. And so when I got diagnosed, I was really sad and also frustrated. I've done all right for myself in life. Pretty average student at school. and college, built a business over 18 years. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But I always was left wondering, what if I'd been diagnosed when I was younger? What if, I'd got the support that I needed growing up? Would I have done better in school? Would my life have turned out the way, differently? And for me, I have to accept that is the way it is. My life has turned out the way it is. I can't turn back time. I can't go back into the past. And so it's taken a while, a few years, to come to terms with that and add on people's attitudes, not everyone's, but a lot of people's attitudes towards ADHD. They think everyone has it. People are making it up. They're making excuses, etc. And that is really hard to deal with, actually. I noticed in the first few years of me after my diagnosis, not saying to people or talking about it much for fear of judgment, ridicule, shame, all these fun emotions. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. And I am now able, I'm sitting on camera talking about having ADHD. I'm very open about it, and I'm very keen to be a supporter of people who are maybe a little bit behind on my journey, or in terms of coming to terms with it and being able to speak freely about it. But I've come a long way since then. Hence why I now focus a lot of my work and my energy onto supporting people who have ADHD and run businesses, because that is exactly what I've done. And I wanted to also mention about diagnosis, because I know that's a very controversial subject in the world of ADHD, and not even in ADHD, outside of ADHD. People have a really tough time getting a diagnosis. And I always maintain, and I always say, that it's the individual that matters. If someone came to me and said, I think I've got ADHD, but I can't get a diagnosis, and these are all my symptoms, and these are all my challenges, does it really matter if you've not got a diagnosis or you have? I mean, there's a whole conversation around whether or not we put labels on things. Having an ADHD diagnosis was incredibly useful for me to come to terms with it. Also to get some validation from a medical professional that I'm not just making it up. And it's helped a lot. And I also recognize that there are people who will be watching this and out there that don't have access to a diagnosis and are frustrated by that. And what I say to you is, surround yourself with people that understand and care about you. Be careful who you talk to about this stuff, because some people don't get it and they aren't able to support you in the way that you would like and you need. And that's okay. You don't have to have everyone in your life being a support. It's really important to be able to find those people. There's lots of people in the ADHD community who are supporting one another. You can get access to them on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, any of those communities. They will be there in some form on those platforms, and there's a lot of content out there. YouTube, obviously, seeing as I'm doing a YouTube video. It's really important to get that support, but it's also really important to work on your boundaries with people. I'm fortunate that no one to my face has said anything about me having ADHD in a negative way, but it's absolutely acceptable and okay for you to say to people, don't speak to me like this, or please don't speak to me like this if you want to be more polite. Ask them to respect your journey, your ADHD, your life. Harder, it's easier said than done, of course, but building up over time and practicing and putting those boundaries in place to say to those people in your life who might be close to you and you don't want to, or you can't cut them out of your life, because that is an option. If there are people in your life who aren't supporting you and you've decided that actually it's better for you not to have them in your life, absolutely. But if there are people in your life that you aren't able to disconnect from or distance yourself from, it's really important to be able to ask for those boundaries and put those boundaries in place and hold those boundaries. It's easier said than done. But you really need to have people in your life that get you, understand you, irrespective of a diagnosis or not. I know you're not making it up. I'm not making it up. I know it's really hard. And diagnosis or not, you deserve to be treated with respect and support and love. So, I want to talk a little bit more in depth about what it's like to run a business with ADHD and some of the challenges that I've faced and still face, and also the challenges I see my clients face and grapple with, and share some tips and some strategies that you can use. If you have ADHD, you are 300 to 500 times more likely to be an entrepreneur. That's pretty grounded research. I don't know how they came up with that because I haven't read it all the way through, but the statistics are there. So the likelihood of you watching this and being an entrepreneur and having ADHD or thinking you have ADHD is very, very high. I think because one of the main reasons for that is because we've grown up in a world that is built for neurotypical people. Understandably, because there's more of them and we haven't had that insight and understanding of ADHD, and more people aren't coming to terms and realizing that they have ADHD. So it's natural it's going to be that way. But trying to be a neurodiverse person in a neurotypical world is challenging at best, because everything's designed to operate from a neurotypical perspective. Working Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Some people work evenings and weekends, of course, but the kind of natural way of working in the UK is to work that pattern. And you're expected to be at your desk at 9 and leave at 5 or whatever variation of that is. And also, most people with ADHD, because of course not everyone who has ADHD has it show up in their lives in the same way, but a lot of people who have ADHD are very creative, very visionary, and move fast, which is kind of describing an entrepreneur as well. So the career choice really suits us because we get to have control over everything. We get to most of the time work when we want, choose who we work with, what kind of work we want to do. There's a downside, of course, which is that you don't have someone guiding you. You are able to work when you want. You are able to go and take a nap when you want or take a chill out. So it's a bit of swings and roundabouts, yin and yang, if you will, about the positives and the negatives of having ADHD and running a business. But one of the things that I see coming up time and time again, and it's incredibly consistent across all of my clients, is a sense of overwhelm and lack of direction and lack of focus. Of course, lack of focus, because that's one of the key symptoms of having ADHD. Lack of direction, overwhelm, stress. Our nervous systems generally are way more sensitive than a neurotypical person. So we pick up on stuff, we take rejection stings a lot harder, rejection sensitivity, dysphoria, RSD. I know I am very challenged by that. And so there's lots of things about running a business that really actually don't work for ADHD people. That said, it's a question of, can you overcome it? Because a lot of my clients come to me when they are at the point where they've had enough and they know they need guided and very directed help to get them from A to B. And not so much anymore, but certainly in the past, there was a kind of general consensus within the ADHD community that I saw where people would say, it was almost like, I can't because I've got ADHD. It was like it was such a disability that you were stopped in doing things. That is not my approach to life. and to having ADHD at all. If that is your approach to life, good for you. You do you, I do me. And this is how I do it. So if that's something you're interested in not seeing it as a complete and utter, a stop to what you're doing, but rather something to overcome, then we are going to get along, because that's the kind of guy I am. And it's about finding different ways of doing things, of working, systems, automation, anything that you can think of that can support someone. Let's say you broke your leg, plaster cast on your leg, no crutches, nothing, you're stood at the bottom of a big flight of stairs. Can you get up? Yes. Is it going to be easy? No. And that's kind of an analogy for how I see people with ADHD. A neurotypical person with unbroken legs and able to walk up the stairs, easy peasy, right? Someone with a broken leg, not easy. So, but they are able to get to the top of the stairs. That's my point. But it's going to be a little bit difficult. If you give them crutches and maybe a handrail, and maybe even someone stood next to them holding their hand, that is going to help them get up the stairs. It's not going to be easy, but they are able to get up. And that's my philosophy and my approach towards having ADHD and running a business. The great thing about all of this is that you are your own boss. So you can create your own schedule, your own ways of working. You can do it however you want to do it, because guess what? It's your business. So I think I noticed that in myself, and I noticed that in a lot of my clients, is being able to overcome that initial breaking out of the neurotypical system, the way of doing it, and starting to create a business that works around you. My hours are very flexible, and I work around my energy levels. My energy levels are always best in the morning. So I put the type of work that I know works best in the morning, and I put certain types of work in the afternoon. Not so much anymore, but I used to take a lot of naps in the afternoon, and that was okay. I mean, it wasn't, because my brain gave me such a hard time, but actually it is okay. And this is the point. Do it your way. Yes, you've still got to do the work. Yes, you've still got to show up. Yes, you've still got to deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on. It's just not going to look the same way as everyone else. And I think giving yourself permission, whether that's you listening to what I'm saying and taking this as permission from me until you can give yourself permission, but find that permission from wherever to realize it's your business and you get to do it however you want. I think that is the first step in being able to successfully run a business, because I struggled for many, many years before I was diagnosed, trying to do it the way that everyone else did it and really struggling with it. I struggle with focus big time, really struggling with it sometimes. If I'm not interested in doing something or I find it boring, man, it's like pushing water uphill. It's really tough. But I have figured out ways for me to be able to work around that. And sometimes if I'm sat there and I'm really struggling, I'll go for a half an hour walk, maybe, or go for a run, or do something that's going to get me out away from my desk and then come back and do it later. And it's these things that actually I've realized my clients don't do because they feel they're obligated. They have to be there working really hard. There's a lot to be said for you hustle bros on social media who are pushing this message of grind, rise and grind, hustle, all that sort of stuff. That is not my bag at all. It is for some people. I don't think it really works most of the time for people with ADHD. It certainly might feel like it, because if you're hyper-focused on something, I notice that myself as well. If I'm hyper-focused on something, I can really get lost in something and have to be really careful to make sure that I get enough sleep, I stop working, I eat well, I exercise, I avoid alcohol, all of the things that everyone really, we know works for people. But I did have one client recently who was really struggling with overwhelm, and they sent me a screenshot of their diary, and I said, you got way too much work in there. No wonder you're stressed out and overwhelmed, because you're just overloading yourself because you feel like you need to get it done, and it's exciting, which is great. But we do need to be able to find that balance, because working at that pace for that long isn't sustainable. We've got to break it up. So I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on the subject today. I am producing more content around what it takes to run a business, also what it takes to run a business with ADHD. So if you've liked what I've just shared and you want to see more, make sure you like, subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know you're there, let me know what you're dealing with, let me know what you found useful, let me know what you didn't find useful. But just to remind you that you can absolutely succeed and smash it out of the park running a business with ADHD. It might take some time, but you will get there as long as you keep on practicing. That is the thing. It's about practicing and finding new ways of doing things. Oh, that didn't work. We'll try it this way. So thanks for listening, and I will see you very soon.